I'm going to answer those quiz questions on muscular system, and I have a couple of drawings, the body, and some diagrams without content. Quiz number 1, pick 5 major muscles and describe their orientation to another major muscle using correct anatomical terminology. Okay, so I have a body here, and at the top of that, at the very superior and anterior portion of the person is the frontalis. Then posterior to frontalis is occipitalis, and just move a little inferior to this, and it's in posterior. There we have a trapezius muscle, and anterior to the trapezius muscle we have deltoid, and then more distal to the deltoid we have biceps in an anterior, and in posterior we have a tricep muscle. And in case number 2, describe what conditions can lead to muscle fatigue. So muscle fatigue is mainly from the accumulation of lactic acid, which is a byproduct of anaerobic exercise. That this anaerobic exercise produces the energy without oxygen, and this usually is related to the high physical activities. So this buildup of lactic acid is mainly responsible for the muscle fatigue. And quiz number 3, explain how the skeletal system, muscular system, and nervous system are integrated by describing the relevance of neuromuscular junctions. So when the nervous system generates a signal like an action potential, and that travels through a muscle nerve cell called motor neuron. So neuromuscular junction is where the motor neuron reaches the muscle cell, and when the signal reaches the neuromuscular junction, and that triggers a chemical reactions, and that leads to muscle fibers that composes the muscle skeletal that compose the skeletal muscle tissues, and then this chemical reaction makes the muscle fiber reorganize to shorten the muscle, which is a muscle contraction. And that is how the nervous system and skeletal system and muscular system works together. So quiz number 4, compare and contrast origin and insertion, as well as flexion and extension. So origin and insertion are both a attachment site, but origin does not really move during the contraction, and usually proximal, close to the main body. And while the origin does not really move, insertion does move during the contraction, and usually more distal. And flexion and extension is that both of them occurs in the sagittal plane. So it's a flexion and extension. So flexion decrease the angle between the two parts, decrease the angle, and extension increase the angle between the two body parts. And quiz number 5, draw a diagram depicting what happens during a muscle contraction, and include the major stages of a muscle contraction. So there is a little diagram I draw. So So x-axis is time, and as time flows, and this is y-axis is the muscle tension. So here is a kind of latent period, and just they are getting ready for the action, and then there is a stimulus, the real stimulus, the real action happened, and then signal comes in, and then with signal travels, so the nervous system, they just the signals, and then the signal travels to the muscular junction, neuromuscular junction, and triggering those chemical reaction to make the muscle fibers shorten and contract. So here is the contraction period, the contraction phase, contraction period. So the tension is just going really high, and then after that the muscle gets relaxed again, and they just this is the relaxation period. So muscle gets relaxed again and preparing for the next signal. And this is how the muscle contraction works. And quiz number 6, draw a table describing the location, appearance, and control type of each type of muscle tissue. So I just draw a little diagram that can help. So there is 3 types of muscle tissues. So cardiac, skeletal, and smooth muscle. So this is going to be cardiac, and cardiac, skeletal, and smooth muscles. So cardiac, skeletal, smooth muscle. And cardiac muscle is located in the wall of heart, and the skeletal muscle usually attaches the bone to the bones, and smooth muscle is found in the lining of the stomach. And in terms of appearance, the cardiac muscle is striated, and it's more like a long tube, striated. And the skeletal muscle is also striated, but more like a thin, long line of tubes, and they are also in a bundle. And smooth muscle is a kind of spindle shape, like this, and so spindle shaped. So this is how they appear. In terms of control type, so cardiac muscle is more like involuntary, which means we can't really move it all by ourselves, so we can't really control them, so they are not under control. And the skeletal muscles is voluntary, so they are under voluntary control. We can really move as we want. And smooth muscles is also involuntary control, under involuntary control, so we can't really move or control the smooth muscle.